All right, so I'm waiting for a tool to come in. I need a bit to drill a 2.5-inch hole in the leg for the vise. So while I'm waiting for that, I figured this is the oak that's going to make up the chop. So I've already milled this down. I flattened it, flattened on 3 sides. One side I left rough because I'm going to trim that off on the table saw here. And so yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and dimension this, kind of cut out the design or mark the design so I can put it on the table saw and cut the sides off, and then go over to the bandsaw and cut out the little curve section to bring it down to a thinner portion here. I'm also going to be staining this a darker color, which I actually have this mahogany gel stain that I like that looks kind of like this. So I really like the look of that, so I'm going to stain this dark. And I'm also going to put some butterflies in, some butterfly keys down in this end, down this direction, because there's a crack going up through that part of the wood. And I already put some super glue in there and I've clamped it. So, but I want to go ahead and I'm going to stabilize it with some butterfly keys. So yeah, let me go ahead and start measuring out and marking out how I want to have this thing done. Alright, let me start cutting this on the table saw just to dimension it down a little bit more, and then we can do a little bit more shaping on it. There's the chop. Okay, so the vise that I went with, the vise device that I went with for this, instead of a bench crafted screw vise, I went with a Hovarder. It's kind of a custom vise, which is kind of a hybrid between like the screwed vise and a quick release vise. So basically it has this solid shaft right here, and then there's a tensioning, so when you actually turn the wheel, it tensions it so that it won't move and it tightens it down. So, but for the most part, when you loosen it, it just runs along this open shaft up here. It's keyed inside this shaft. So what I need to do is figure out what holes I need to drill in my leg to accept this portion right here, and I'll show this to you. So there's a portion right here that needs to go in here. This portion attaches into the actual chop, and then this goes behind the leg, and this gets fashioned behind the leg. So basically the hole I need to worry about is this hole for the shaft and this hole right here for this piece. All right, so this is where my problem started, because I needed to drill a 2.5 inch hole 3/4 inches deep. I did not have a Forstner bit that was 2.5 inches. My Forstner bit stopped at 2 1/8 inch, and pretty much all Forstner bit kits stop at 2 1/8 inch, not 2.5. So I actually just purchased this. It's a 2.5 inch bit. We will hopefully see how well this does, but it only needs to go 3/4 of an inch, so it's not that deep. So I'm hoping that this will do the job. I also had to get this, which is a Forstner bit shaft extension. This is a 4-inch extension because Forstner bits will not go through. You can see how wide this board is here. I need a Forstner bit to go all the way through this. So I had to get this extension in order to get that bit all the way through and make this hole right here. So basically I need an 1 1/8 hole that goes all the way through, and then a 2.5 inch, 3/4 inch on the front of this, and then that will accept the mechanism up top. The bottom hole for this, I'm not worried about. That's a shaft. It's 30 millimeters. So all I have to do is drill basically well, I take that back. I have to drill a 30 millimeter shaft. In addition, pardon me, this is a linear bearing. The shaft will actually travel through this linear bearing. So I have to drill a hole that is this deep in the leg, and it's going to mount much further down on the leg, like down here. So it's going to mount inside the leg and be this deep in the leg. So this is, what did I say? This is about, I'm trying to think, 1 99 1/28. So it's just a little under 2 inches for the larger piece. Well, a little under 13/16, 1 13/16. But the top part of this is, yeah, it's basically 3 inches across. So in order to get that drilled out, I could not find a bit like this to do 3 inches. And so I had to settle for your standard hole saw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically lightly do the hole saw, then I'm going to use a regular Forstner bit, do some relief cuts just to get the depth I need, and then a chisel to clean it out, or maybe a router to clean out and make it flush on the bottom. Kind of a lot of pain in the butt stuff to go into this, so I'm really hoping that this pays out big dividends when I'm done. So anyway, let me go ahead and mark some stuff, and then we'll go over to the drill press and start making holes. All right, I think, yeah, okay, there's still a lot of crud in there. Let's see if I can, without eating too much of that. Oh, that's tasty. All right, let's see. All right, now that's perfect. You know, I think for good measure, I'm going to go in just a fraction, like maybe a 64th more, just a touch. So let me go ahead and do that. All right, that'll do for that. So now the next thing I need to do is to come over and grab a 1 1/8 inch Forstner bit. All right, there we go, 1 1/8 inch. So this is going to go the rest of the way down using the center point that this bit put in there, and that will guide this one perfectly down into that position. And I can go ahead and finish that off. All right, so you can see that even if I plunge down, this is going to come up shy. It needs to go all the way down to here. So that's why I had to get that extension, because I need to go all the way down to the bottom, and I just couldn't do that with a bit that's this tall. So I'm going to go ahead and swap this out. I think I'll go as deep as I can using the bit, and then I'll switch over to the extension and finish the hole up that way. That's it. All right, that'll be a hole all the way through. So let me lower the table. And see if we can figure out how to get this thing out of here. There we go. Nice hole all the way through. That's perfectly done. All right, good deal. Okay, so you can see that I've already mounted the Delrin bearing in here. That's the one that needed to be 3/4 of an inch, and it's 2.5 inches in diameter. And it's just 3 screws, so I went ahead and marked them and pre-drilled and then mounted that in there. So now the directions say that I'm actually supposed to flip this over so that I can actually mark the holes for the back side of the device. So what I'm going to do is flip this and have it so that the hole is hanging out over top of my bench, or over top of my saw here towards the floor. And then take this and goes like this, and drop this into the bearing and all the way down through. So the way they say that you're supposed to actually get this centered is basically to push up as far as I can this way, here, 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 because you want the furthest dimension out on each side. There we go. So now I've got lines that I can actually try to center it between all those pencil marks, and that should be centered in the middle of that hole so that I get free range of that shaft to move up and down. That shaft will slide up and down like this, and it should move freely through that position. So let me go ahead and mark those holes, and then I can pre-drill and put some screws in, and then this part will be done. Actually, I don't have to put the screws in yet. I can put those in after the leg is mounted back in the bench. So while I have the leg off, I'll show you what I'm doing to actually attach the stringer, the large front stringer, onto the leg here. And what I did was, in the previous videos, you probably saw me making some mortise and tenons on the legs. So you can see here's one right here. It looks a little ugly, but that's okay because the tenon and the wood cover this up, so it doesn't have to be pretty. But what I am going to do is take this drill bit right here. You can see I've got a stop collar on there. I'm going to drill 2 holes from the side of the leg going down through here, and then it's going to stop right at that stop collar right there. And then I'm going to use some dowel rod that I made out of a piece of walnut. I got a video for this. I made it with my table saw out of some square stock. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, this is a little bit undersized. This is a 3/8 dowel. This is just a hair undersized drill bit right here. So I'm going to take this, drill the holes, and then I'll cut off the dowel, and I'm going to draw board these. So I'm going to drill these holes, and then I'm going to mark with probably a brad point bit. I'll stick the tenon in there as far as it'll go. I'll mark it with a brad point bit, and then what I'll do is I'll just move those holes back on the tenon. I'll move them this way on the tenon about maybe a 1/16 of an inch or so. And what that does is as I drive that dowel into the hole, it's going to be a little offset and squeeze that tenon back up farther into the recess here. So that's the plan. So let me show you what I'm doing here. I'm just drilling out 2. I've got them marked here, and I'm going to drill these out. And I've got this just to kind of keep myself square. I could do these at the drill press, but it's pretty easy to keep things straight if you just take your time. There we go. So that's all I'm doing is just driving that hole through, and then I've got another hole on the inside, and then I'll take this and where I stick that. So that'll go through, it'll get glued in, and it'll pull that tenon back up inside there. So let me go ahead and get the other one, and then I can put this leg back on, and then we're pretty much ready for glue up here. Let me see if this collar slid. Yeah, this collar slid. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this down. I'm gonna drill this other hole, and then I'm gonna stick this leg back on the table. So the last thing I need to do to get this ready for the leg vise is to fix the portion that's going to be the bottom stabilizer. So what I'm going to have is a 30mm steel shaft that runs through a linear bearing. So there's actually ball bearings running through here. The steel shaft is going to run through the leg this way, through the linear bearing, which is going to stabilize so that you don't get canting when you're tightening down the vise. So I actually have to do 3 holes for this one mechanism. So I need one that's a little over 3 inches. This one's about 1 3/4 inches for the outside of this to seat that down inside, and then a little over 30mm right here for the rest of the shaft to come out the back of the leg. I think I'm going to start with the 1 3/4 though. Go down a little bit with the, just to get some pilot holes started. Then I'll go down with the 1 3/4 to get a pilot hole started with that, and then I will use the hole saw, which is a 3-inch hole saw, to go down 3/8 of an inch for the largest part here. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. All right, I think. So stay tuned. All right, let me show you what I've got. Okay, so there's my 2 holes so far. So you can see I've still left myself that center guide hole, and that comes from the center point on the Forstner bit. I've got the step up to the 1 1/8 hole, then the step up to the 1 3/4 inch hole right here. This is 1 3/4, that's 1 1/8 on the small one. And now I'm going to draw I'm going to cut a large 3-inch diameter, but it's only going to be 3/8 of an inch thick. So it won't be as thick or as deep as any of these. And that way, when I clean this out, I still have my guide holes to use to go deeper for the rest of the cuts that I need, for the rest of the holes that I need for this thing right here. So, all right, let's get that done. That's what we want right there. That's perfect. All right, now switch back. Okay, so I had to, I was just a little tight with the bit that I chose for this, so I had to swap out to a slightly larger one, which was a little bit difficult to get drilled out because usually you use that center spike to guide the bit down in there. So I kind of had to really clamp this thing down, but now it fits in there and it's pretty perfect. So the only thing I have to do now is bore out the hole that goes straight through the 30mm hole for the rest of the shaft, and then this is done. And then once it's done, I can go glue things up. Okay, so I finished up the hole for the 30mm shaft with the extension on here so I could get all the way through the leg. So now what I've got is this piece in here. It's flush, it's ready to go, and then the hole comes all the way out the back. So I am ready now for the actual vise portion and for the parallel section down here using the linear shaft. So the only thing I need to do now is screw this part into the leg and get it set. And then I'm ready to actually start gluing the sucker up. So I think I'm going to cut the video here. There's been a lot of little things going on. And then I'm going to finish with the final glue up of the legs and attaching the top in the next video. I know this is running really long, but there's a lot to this, and for anybody who's thinking of doing anything similar to this, I just want them to get an idea you know, I just want you to know what you're getting into. I mean, building a bench sounds like it's a really quick and easy thing, especially if you have plans. But you know, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. There's a lot of adjustments you have to make on the fly, and you know, there's sometimes you just have design changes that you get into it, and you're like, you know what, I just don't like the way this is. So this whole thing has been a design change for me, but it's one that I've enjoyed doing. So I think this video will be cut off now, and then hopefully one, maybe two more, just one for the assembly and then one for finishing touches, and that should be it. All right, so thanks for watching this part, and I will see you in the next video.